Okay, we're going to take you straight to Brussels, where Davis and Michel Barnier are giving a news conference. Let's have a listen in.
Showing in this negotiation, I'd like to start off by saying you should not expect from us, at the stage where we are today, any announcements or decisions. The discussions have taken place at a time between two European Council meetings. We're in a time of deepening discussions, clarification, and a time of technical work. Now, I in particular, are determined at this moment in time to try and reach an agreement in this first sequence of the orderly withdrawal of the United Kingdom from the EU, as the UK decided. And this is the top priority. Our top priority, my top priority, that of my team, with a view to the European Council meeting on the 14th and 15th of December. The decision of the European Council, especially the decisions taken last month and the resolutions of the European Parliament, guide me every day in the work I do. And if you read the resolutions and revisit the decisions of the European Council, you will see once again that only sufficient progress, that is to say, sincere and real progress on the three main key issues of these negotiations, only this sufficient progress will enable the triggering of the second phase of our negotiation. These three issues, as you know, let me repeat it, are indissociable. I would also like to say that in this extraordinary negotiation, extraordinary complex negotiation, that we are not asking the United Kingdom for concessions, nor are we planning to make any concessions ourselves. We are basing ourselves on facts. We are working on a legal basis. We're working on reciprocal and specific commitments. We must and we want to bring back certainty, in particular legal certainty, where Brexit has created uncertainty and a fair amount of concern.
Ladies and gentlemen, on citizens' rights, we are making some progress, although we need to work further on a number of points. The UK wants to put in place administrative procedures through which EU citizens can obtain settled status. The EU needed reassurances on how such a system would work. It should be simple to use and low cost. We also needed reassurance on how people, when rejected, can appeal effectively. The UK has now provided useful clarifications that are a good basis for further work. We also had encouraging discussions on direct effect of the withdrawal agreement, and this is a key point to guarantee citizens' rights. There are still a number of points that need more work. Family reunification, the right to export social security benefits, and the role of the European Court of Justice in guaranteeing consistent application of case law in the UK and in the EU. These three issues are important for people, as the European Parliament has also stressed. On Ireland, we will continue our dialogue on Ireland and Northern Ireland. We have to ensure a common reading, the same reading, of the conditions, consequences and implications of Brexit and the Good Friday Agreement and the common travel area. This should lead us to identify the technical and regulatory solutions necessary to prevent a hard border while preserving the integrity of the single market. As David and I told you last time, the unique situation on the island of Ireland requires specific solutions.
And finally, on the financial regulation, on the financial settlement, we need to work now over the next few weeks on an objective interpretation of the undertakings entered into by Prime Minister May in Florence. I think this is absolutely vital if we are to achieve sufficient progress in December. As I said before, I repeat that it is just a matter of settling accounts, as in any separation. Ladies and gentlemen, the United Kingdom decided to leave the Union more than 500 days ago, and it will be leaving the Union on the 29th of March at midnight Brussels time. Now, in order to achieve our common objective, that is, to organize an orderly withdrawal on the basis of an agreement, we will also work as intensely as is necessary in the weeks to come in the run-up to the next European Council meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Michel. Last month, I welcomed Michel's recognition of the new dynamic in the talks created by the Prime Minister's Florence speech. That speech set out a clear and pragmatic approach to securing an agreement that works for both the United Kingdom and the European Union, one that heralds a new era of cooperation and partnership between us. During the October discussions, we isolated the key remaining issues on citizens' rights, Northern Ireland and the financial settlement, as Michel has just told you. So this week our focus has been on finding solutions to those issues. It was, of course, inevitable that our discussions would narrow to a few outstanding, albeit important issues. So we continue to work through these remaining issues, consolidating the progress we've made since June, and exploring options for reaching agreement. And now is the time for both sides to move together to seek solutions. This is a serious business. So if we're to find a way forward, it will require flexibility and pragmatism from both sides, as I think Michel also stressed. We've been clear with the European Union we are willing to engage in discussions in a flexible and constructive way to reach the progress needed. So I'll now address each issue in turn. On Northern Ireland, we have continued to have good technical discussions. We have drafted joint principles on the continuation of the common travel area and associated rights. We have continued to explore how best we preserve North-South cooperation. And we are drafting joint principles and commitments which will guide the solutions drawn up in the second phase. We've also had frank discussions about some of the big challenges around the border. We remain firmly committed to avoiding any physical infrastructure, and we've made that clear. We've been clear about that this week. These discussions, of course, will continue in the run-up to the December Council. But let's be under no illusion. We will only be able to conclude them finally in the context of a future relationship. We respect the European Union desire to protect the legal order of the single market and the customs union. But that cannot come at cost to the constitutional and economic integrity of the United Kingdom. As I said before, we recognise the need for specific solutions for the unique circumstances of Northern Ireland. But let me be clear, this cannot amount to creating a new border inside our United Kingdom. Now, in this process, we are resolutely committed to upholding the Belfast or Good Friday Agreement in all its parts. We need to approach the challenging issues that arise as part of this process in a spirit of pragmatism, creativity, and with a high degree of political sensitivity. We owe that to the people of Northern Ireland and of Ireland to do so. We've continued to make progress on citizens' rights. We're now seeking political solutions to the last outstanding issues on both sides. Earlier this week, as Michel said, we published a detailed note setting out our new administrative procedures for European Union citizens seeking settled status in the United Kingdom. This delivers on a commitment I made actually in the last round of negotiations and discussed in the press conference too. We listened carefully to the concerns about this process, and we've responded. As our paper sets out, the new procedures will be as streamlined and straightforward as possible, and will be based on a simple, transparent criteria laid out in the withdrawal agreement. This week we've discussed options for resolving issues ranging from family reunification to the export of benefits. For example, we've been clear that we're willing to consider what further reassurance we can give to existing families, even if they're not currently living together in the United Kingdom. There are a few areas where our citizens need to see further progress and movement from the European Union. On the mutual recognition of professional qualifications, the European Union's approach remains more narrow than we would like. We believe it's only right that people holding qualifications or in the process of acquiring them should be allowed to continue or begin their careers as they do now. We want to protect their livelihoods in line with our broader approach that people should be able to continue living their lives as they do now. On voting rights, we're disappointed the European Union has been unwilling so far to include this in the scope of the withdrawal agreement, as citizens may lose a right which they currently enjoy. However, if it does fall out of scope, we will discuss this issue bilaterally with Member States. Finally, this week we've sought to give further clarity on our commitment to incorporate the Agreement on Citizens' Rights into UK law. This will ensure that European Union citizens in the United Kingdom can directly enforce their rights in UK courts, providing certainty and clarity in the long term. We've made clear that over time our courts can take account of the rulings of the European Court of Justice in this area to help ensure consistent interpretation. But let me be clear. While we share the same aims, it remains a key priority for the United Kingdom as we leave the European Union to preserve the sovereignty of our courts. On the financial settlement, we've made substantial technical progress across all the issues that will need to be addressed. The Prime Minister was clear in her Florence speech, but let me reiterate once again. Our European partners will not need to pay more or receive less over the remainder of the current budget plan as a result of our decision to leave. The UK will honour the commitments we have made during the period of our membership. We are making clear progress in building a common technical understanding on every item here. But as I outlined at the start, this week has enabled us to consolidate the progress of earlier negotiating rounds and to draw out those areas where further political and technical discussion is required. This is now about moving into the political discussions that will enable both of us to move forward together. We must now look forward, we must now look ahead to moving our discussions onto our future relationship. For this to happen, both parties need to build confidence in both the process and indeed in the shared outcome. And we remain ready and willing to engage as often and as quickly as needed to secure this outcome over the weeks remaining ahead of the December European Council. The United Kingdom will continue to engage and negotiate constructively, as we've done since the start. But we need to see flexibility, imagination and willingness to make progress on both sides if these negotiations are to succeed and we are able to realise a new deep and special partnership. Thank you.
Thank you both. I will start with the German press agency. Verena, here on the left.
I'm Verena with the German press agency. Mr. Barnier, could you confirm for me that you will need clarifications or concessions, whichever you prefer, from the UK within 2 weeks in order to move on to the second phase in December? Thank you.
Ma réponse est oui.
My answer is yes.
Okay. Let's move on the right. Yes, James. Move to the right, yeah.
Mr. Davis, first of all, what happened to accelerating these talks, as Mrs May promised? This is, it's been almost a month since you last met. These talks only lasted 2 days instead of the normal 4. And do you understand businesses' concerns that time's passing and that this uncertainty is deeply damaging to them? And if I may, after watching recent events in London, how concerned are you now that before this process is over, you may be dealing with a different government in the UK?
Shall I start? James, as I just said, in what I said earlier, we remain ready and willing to engage as often and as quickly as is needed to ensure this outcome over the weeks remaining ahead of the December European Council. There's been a change in pace, I think, but ultimately this is about delivering results, and that will depend on the content, not just the speed of the negotiation.
I don't know really which is the easiest question between the two. Non, je ne vais pas évidemment faire de commentaires sur la situation.
I'm not going to comment on the internal political situation in the United Kingdom. We are, of course, watching it closely. But I also follow the public debate in the UK closely. And we try to provide information and answer questions. The other day I was struck by the reaction amongst the British population to the fact that I met Nick Clegg and others, but my door is open. For example, this week I met a delegation from the House of Commons Parliamentary Committee. We negotiate with the government of the United Kingdom, the government in place, and that government has confirmed that they will be leaving the European Union. They wish to leave the single market and the customs union, and that's all I can say. Thank you.
And I saw Mark Peppercorn there, centre left.
Good afternoon. Sorry, Mark Peppercorn, Netherlands. Mr. Barnier, could you tell us also what you will do if you don't get the clarification you want within 2 weeks? And secondly, I mean, this is now the 6th round of negotiations. Well, maybe we should say 5.5, because this week was not much. How confident are you that you will get clarification to continue to get a deal on sufficient progress in December, if you look to what happened the last 5.5 rounds? Thanks.
Our technical experts, our two teams, are still working with each other in between the rounds to prepare for the rounds in order to clarify certain points. So, as I'm sure you've appreciated, these rounds are important. I mean, certainly for me, because I am working with a certain remit and under the supervision of the Council, the other Member States and the European Parliament. And before each round and after each round, I need to embark on in-depth dialogue with them, which is why I need time. But our very professional teams of experts, David Davis, Holly Robbins, and their teams and our teams do have exchanges and discussions in between rounds to prepare for them. Now, you said 6 rounds. Well, yes. But you can see how complex these negotiations are. Now, we haven't actually taken stock of everything yet. I've said this before. From a legal point of view, there's about 1,000 international agreements that the UK is going to have to leave in one way or another. There are thousands of legislative acts, and there will be human and social repercussions that are important for us. There will also be economic and financial consequences. So 6 rounds is hardly anything. I mean, we'll be hopefully having a 7th round soon. Now, of course, we're not at the stage of settling everything in the nitty-gritty, but we want sufficient progress. But we want sincere and real progress, as I said. I, myself, have to tell the citizens about what rights they're going to have. We have to make sure that both EU citizens in the UK and UK citizens in the 27 member states, I have to report to them. Now, and there are many other actors, European Development Fund, there are other actors outside Europe, stakeholders in Africa, for example, that are also involved. So we have to make sure that we maintain stability and dialogue in Ireland as well. Now, we haven't got to that stage yet. So, as I said, we're not trying to settle all the details now. If we manage to reach an agreement on sufficient progress, then we will have several months, right through to October 2018, to finalise this draft treaty, this agreement. But from a political, as well as a technical and financial point of view, we need to have sufficient progress on these three indissociable issues: citizens, Northern Ireland and the financial settlement, but we haven't got there yet.
Okay. Let's then go to the Telegraph. Yes, go ahead, please.
Peter Foster with the London Daily Telegraph. Mr. Davis, you yourself have said we need to move on to a political discussion about the money. This week has been a stock-taking exercise, we're told. Can you tell us why you're going to be in any better a place to make a deal in December than you were in October? And to Mr. Barnier, these talks are deadlocked, Mr. Barnier, and you yourself had a very good suggestion about how to move them on, which was that you could talk transition with the British while thrashing out the details of the bill, but you were overruled by the member states. Do you feel you have the personal authority to conduct this negotiation, or put another way, who is running this negotiation? Is it you, or is it the French and the Germans?
Can I start? Well, first thing I'd say is December depends on sufficient progress, and that's a Commission construct, and as Michel has just been explaining what that looks like. But let's be clear. I've said it on several occasions in these press conferences, including today, there's no doubt that we have made and continue to make, including this round, significant progress across a whole range of issues. Across the board, we've made progress towards resolving some really difficult questions. And that, of course, will continue at pace between now and December. And I hope it will lead to sufficient progress. Michel.
Thank you, David. Before I answer your question, I'd like to supplement my earlier answer. Real and sincere progress. I have to present a sincere and real picture on those three subjects to the European Council and the European Parliament. If that's not the case, then we will continue. And that will put back the opening of discussions on the future. Which brings me on to your question now. That includes the transition, because that does relate to the future, because it would start on the 30th of March 2019 after the actual exiting of the United Kingdom, and our future relations and the long-term partnership that we wish to agree on with the United Kingdom. Of course, France and Germany's position is important. They have important points of view on these matters. But I listened to all 27 EU member states and the European Parliament. And yesterday I was in Italy meeting the Prime Minister. I was in Slovakia last week. Next Monday I'm in Poland. And we have contacts with other member states and governments. And every day I weigh up two elements of importance to me. The unity of the 27 and the confidence, the trust they have in their negotiator.
All our negotiators do not have, unfortunately, more time. Thank you all for your presence. See you.
Well, that was David Davis, the Brexit Secretary, and Michel Barnier, the European Chief Negotiator. Michel Barnier saying that we have 2 weeks to make progress on those three key areas, being citizens' rights, the Northern Ireland border